Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I wanted to discuss 10 things that I came up with that nobody told me about for after I have a baby and after I get home. My friend and I were discussing the other day. We had our babies 16 days apart, and she was talking about something about insurance, and it just got me thinking that there were some things that I didn't know about, no one told me about. Maybe you guys did know about them, but I'm a first-time mom, and I just thought that I would share them with you because it's just random things that I just didn't know, and I think that this would be helpful for people who also don't know. So if you want to see my 10 things that I didn't know about, then just keep watching. Okay, so I have a list on my lap, so if I look down, that's what I'm doing. So the first thing, my milk didn't really come in until the very last day that we were at the hospital, and it wasn't like a lot. So I would suggest feeding your baby before you leave the hospital. Now I just asked for a bottle. I just gave her formula. We don't live that far away from the hospital. It was like a 20-25 minute drive, but I didn't want her fussing in the car seat if she was hungry, so I just asked them for a bottle, and I fed her right before we left. I think this is a good tip, especially if you don't live close to the hospital. Definitely feed and change the baby right before you leave the hospital, and then you should be good to go for the ride home. It kind of seems like, duh, why wouldn't you do that? But it just like hit me when we were like packing up the car. I was like, shoot. Well, especially because I didn't have any formula at home. I didn't even think about that I would be giving her formula. But her blood sugars were low, so I wanted to give her formula until my milk actually did come in. So we didn't have anything, so I just asked them for a bottle, and they were okay with that. So definitely do that if you're going to be bottle feeding, or if your milk hasn't come in yet, then I suggest definitely asking them for a bottle before you leave the hospital. And then something that I had no idea about, and this is what me and my friend were talking about, was adding your baby to your insurance. I don't know, I guess I just like assumed that when the hospital billed my insurance for the birth, that they would just automatically add her to my insurance, which they do. My insurance, which I'm sure they're all different, but mine covers her for 30 days. So I actually waited 2 weeks. We were home for 2 weeks, and I'm like, maybe I need to call the insurance just to make sure that she's actually added. So I called, and they said, you know, she's covered for 30 days, but after that, she's not covered. So I had to get a hold of my work and the HR department, and I had to fill out some paperwork. So I actually had to go into work to fill out some paperwork so she could be added to my insurance. And if I wouldn't have even thought to do that, she wouldn't have been covered, and I've taken her to the pediatrician twice already. So obviously after that, she wouldn't have been covered, and I probably would have got a hefty bill. So definitely call your insurance, find out what you need to do if they're covered for so long, and get a hold of your work and see what you need to do to get them added. And then we were actually home for a few days. I want to say we were probably home for like a week, and I got to thinking, like, we didn't get a birth certificate, and no one said anything about it, well, that I can remember at the hospital. I know I filled out paperwork, and they told me it was for the birth certificate, but for some reason I thought we would leave the hospital with it. So I waited a couple more days, and I got her social security card in the mail. So I actually totally forgot that we would even be getting that. So I got the social security card about a little after a week when we were home, and then her birth certificate came about 2 weeks after that. And I actually just like Googled it, and it said that you would get it in the mail, so I just kept waiting, and I eventually did get it. Another thing, I had no idea, it had my maiden name on it as her mother, and I was like, what in the world? Why did they put my maiden name on there? Like, it looks like I'm not, like, someone else is her mom. But I looked it up, and I guess that's what they do. They put your maiden name, which I think is kind of bizarre, but that's another thing I didn't know about. No one said anything about it. Like, freaked me out. I thought I would have had to get a new birth certificate, but no, that's what they do. So That's normal. Another thing, so I knew that they did like blood work for like glucose and everything, and then for the jaundice, but I didn't know that they did like a hearing test. And a lot of times babies, especially like bigger babies or ones that are in longer than like 40 weeks, they get fluid stuck in their ears and like the vernix and stuff. So a lot of times, this is what the doctor told me, a lot of times the babies will fail the hearing test the first time, and they do it at 24 hours after birth, and then if they failed, they do it again at 48 hours, and if they failed at that time, then you have to bring the baby back in a month and have them tested again at the hospital. And Oakland, she failed in her right ear twice. So I actually have to take her tomorrow back to the hospital to get her hearing test again because she's going to be a month old already. But they said, yeah, not to worry about it. A lot of times it's just there's still fluid in their ears, and by them being a month old, usually the fluid's gone and they pass the hearing test. So there's nothing to worry about. But I did get paperwork in the mail that said if she fails it at the month mark, they'll do it again in 3 months, and then I think again in either 6 or 9 months. So crossing my fingers that she passes and we don't have to do anything else. She seems to hear perfectly fine. They said it was just the right ear that she couldn't hear very well out of, so hopefully it's just the fluid. We'll find out. Oh, and another thing. So when you are leaving the hospital, like, you just want to go home and unpack and just relax because everything's very overwhelming leaving the hospital. At least it was for me. Actually, I felt pretty good leaving the hospital, but when we got home, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, I was used to them taking care of me and her at the hospital, so I kind of felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But because I had the C-section, and even with a natural birth, you still would get pain medicine. So I was prescribed pain medicine and iron because I lost a lot of blood, and then she was given a prescription for vitamin D drops. So we needed to go to the drugstore and pick all of that up, and so you need to have a plan. Like, are you gonna, after the hospital, run to the store? Are you gonna go home and have someone else do it? And it was like freaking me out because I knew we needed to get that stuff, and especially me because I needed the pain medicine. So what we did is we just went home. My parents came over to stay with me while Carla ran to the store to get the prescriptions. So I would suggest having a plan. Who's going to run and get your prescriptions? Are you just going to go right after the hospital and do that and then go home, or send someone, or what are you going to do? Definitely have a plan because I needed the medicine and I was afraid I wasn't going to get it in time. So yeah, that's what we did. Oh, another thing. So I was not prepared for having a C-section. Obviously, I was going into it with the mindset of having a natural birth, but that did not happen. I had a C-section, and I had bought the Always Discreet, those underwear that everyone talks about, and they're expensive. They were like $20 for like 15 of them or something ridiculous, and I didn't use any of them. And then I actually really liked their mesh underwear. I know a lot of people either don't like them or love them. My one friend told me that she absolutely loved them, and I'm thinking, like, I'm not gonna wear mesh underwear. That's so gross. No, like, they're so comfortable. And they'll send you home with some, but then after you run out, like, what are you supposed to do? So I had bought, like, bigger underwear, but they weren't high enough to go over my incision. So I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do? So I just got on Amazon and ordered, and I'll link them down below, just ordered some. They're really high-waisted underwear. I don't know if they're actually for, like, C-sections or postpartum. I think that's what I typed in, searched for, like, C-section postpartum underwear or something, but yeah, a lot of people liked them, so I got them. I think there was like a 4-pack or something, but I'll link them down below. So definitely be prepared. Maybe not like get them ahead of time if you think you're gonna have a natural birth, but we have Prime, so I got them in 2 days, so I was able to use the mesh underwear until I got my regular underwear in. So that, and then definitely you're gonna need a lot of pads. They sent me home with quite a few, but I had to change them like several times a day, TMI. But yeah, we're going on a month, and you bleed for a long time. Even though I had a C-section, you bleed for a long time, and I didn't realize that. I just thought like you'd bleed for like a week and be done. No, it's been almost a month. I think I'm at the end of it, but I've went through a lot of pads, so definitely stock up and take as many as you can from the hospital that they'll give you, is my suggestion. And then if you are planning on pumping, breastfeeding, definitely have them send you either. My insurance wouldn't let me get the breast pump before I had her, so I asked them if they would have it sent to my house when I was in the hospital, and that's what they usually do, I guess. But I kept asking them, and they didn't actually order it until the day that we left. So I didn't get my pump until 3 days after I was already home. So definitely be adamant, if you can think of it, the day that you go into the hospital, to have them send one to your house so it's there waiting for you when you get home, because they did send just like a hand pump home with me, so I had something, but it would have been nice to have my actual pump when I got home. Something else that I didn't know was you have to make an appointment with your pediatrician. They like to see the baby 1 to 2 days after they're born. At least the pediatricians around here, that's what they want. So I actually had to make the appointment while I was in the hospital. I think it was the last day we were there, I made the appointment, and we went in the very next day, the day after we got home, we went and took her in. They just do like a full exam and weigh her, and then you have to bring them back a week later to make sure that they're back up to their birth weight, because they tend to lose a few ounces while they're in the hospital and while they're home, and then as long as they're back up to their birth weight by the second appointment, then you're good to go. And I didn't know any of that. I had no idea that I had to take her to the pediatrician twice. So, and then another thing, actually this is the last thing. I know a lot of people, when I was watching like what's in my hospital bag, they said, you know, not to worry about bringing breast pads or regular pads or anything like that. But I did just bring one set of breast pads, and I'm glad that I did, because the last night that we stayed at the hospital, I woke up and I had black pajamas on and a black robe, and this sounds gross, but my shirt and the robe was like crusted. That sounds so disgusting. But I was like, what in the world? Well, my milk had started to come in and leaked while I was sleeping, and I was a mess. So I'm so glad that I brought the breast pads. I'm thinking that the hospital probably had some. I probably could have just asked for some, but I had my own, so I'm glad that I packed at least one set, because we did leave the very next day, so that set came in handy. Alright, so those were my 10 little tips. Not really tips, but just little FYIs, things that I didn't know about, things that came up while we've been home for this month. I can't even believe that she's going to be a month old. It's insane. I literally feel like I just had her last week. We just got home. It's so crazy. But hopefully you found some of this stuff helpful. Yeah, I just want to help people that, you know, didn't know any of this stuff, because I didn't know any of it. So I'm learning. But if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I would love to have you. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Call me drippy,